Americans deserve an open and transparent government that works for them. They deserve access to affordable health care, nutritious food for their families. And that's what Democrats are fighting for. I wish the President and the Republicans would join us in this fight and share our priorities. I yield back.
The gentlewoman from Connecticut reserves. The gentleman from Oklahoma is recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I yield 1 minute to my very good friend, the gentleman from Missouri and member of the Appropriations Committee, Mr. Alford.
The gentleman is recognized.
Well, thank you, Chairman Cole, for your leadership. Mr. Speaker, in the words of Yogi Berra, this seems like deja vu all over again. 59 days ago, I stood at this very lectern debating the ranking member and a friend of mine over the continuing resolution to keep our government open. On September 19th, we did our work in this body, but Senate Democrats chose to hold America hostage with the Schumer shutdown. Democrats in Congress, including the minority whip, shamefully admitted they were using the misery they inflicted on the American people as leverage to achieve their leftist wish list of demands, slowly twisting the heads of the American people in a vice. Tonight, I'm relieved to say the misery of the Schumer shutdown is on our doorstep. Mr. Speaker, this package proves that when Republicans stay united and put America first, we can govern with strength, compassion, and common sense. Tonight, Mr. Speaker, tonight we will reopen the government and liberate the Schumer hostages. And with that, I yield back.
The gentleman yields. The gentleman from Oklahoma reserves. The gentlewoman from Connecticut is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 1 minute to the gentlewoman from California, a member of the Appropriations Committee, Mrs. Torres.
The gentlewoman is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I rise in strong opposition of this deeply flawed bill because the American people deserve better. Since Trump returned to office, Republicans have created an affordability nightmare, a mass transfer of hard-earned taxpayers' dollars to billionaires. In my district alone, more than 350,000 people are facing skyrocketing health care costs or cuts to critical services. Republicans shut down the government instead of finding bipartisan solutions to keep care affordable and took a 7-week paid hiatus, during doubling health care costs for working families, cutting off food assistance right before Thanksgiving, and letting Trump spend his holidays pardoning insurrectionists, enriching billionaires, cozying up to dictators, and building himself a new ballroom, all while taking food away from families in need. And now Senate Republicans want to reward themselves with a taxpayer-funded handout. Shameful, shameful, shameful. House Republicans should be here doing their jobs, not making life harder for working families. I urge a no vote.
Members are advised to direct their comments to the chair and not to engage in personalities toward the president. The gentlewoman from Connecticut reserves. The gentleman from Oklahoma is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I yield 1 minute to my very good friend, distinguished gentleman from Texas and chairman of the House Budget Committee, Mr. Arrington.
The gentleman is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, the Democrats rejecting a clean CR, shutting the government down, creating all the havoc, the pain and suffering for our fellow Americans is so obviously disingenuous. They never vote against clean CRs. Never. For 4 years under Biden, you all didn't reject one clean CR. Chuck Schumer, in 44 years, never rejected a clean CR. So, Mr. Speaker, what's it about? They say policy. They put forward a proposal, Mr. Chairman. They said it's about health care for illegals. They repeal work requirements for able-bodied adults. That's a 80-20 issue in this country. They put forward a spending bill of $1.5 trillion. That's twice the discretionary budget. Mr. Chairman, they'd be spending more money than we've ever spent outside of COVID. That's their counter-proposal. It's not only disingenuous, it's unserious. So what's it about? It's about politics. It's about resisting and fighting and undermining Donald Trump. But here's the deal. They're not fighting and resisting Donald Trump. They're undermining the will of the American people that gave Trump the presidency.
Yield the gentleman an additional 15 seconds.
The gentleman is recognized.
They undermine the will of the people who overwhelmingly elected President Trump and gave him the mandate of the America First agenda. So you're not resisting us. You're posturing and placating the radical left. And you are holding back what the American people wanted, and that was a new direction for this country. I yield back.
Members are reminded to please direct their comments only to the chair. The gentleman from Oklahoma reserves. The gentlewoman from Connecticut is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 1 minute to the gentleman from New Jersey, the distinguished ranking member of the Energy and Commerce Committee, Mr. Pallone.
The gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want my colleagues to understand that when the Affordable Care Act was adopted, it was adopted for middle-class people who could not afford health insurance. They had no other option. They had nowhere to go. You just would end up without health insurance. I have constituents coming to me now crying because their insurance is going from $500 a month to $1,500 a month. That's an increase of $1,000 a month. Who can afford that? No one in the middle class. At the end of 2024 last year, during a Democratic administration, the number of insured Americans was at a record high of about 95%. Democrats worked for that. Then Trump comes in, the Republicans come in with their big ugly bill, and they make cuts to Medicaid, cuts to hospitals and nursing homes, and no funding to extend the ACA tax credits. So what's going to happen? More and more people will have no health insurance. That's the bottom line. They will not have health insurance, and the Republicans don't seem to care. But I want you to know that the Democrats care and will continue to fight for you.
The gentleman yields. The gentlewoman from Connecticut reserves. The gentleman from Oklahoma is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Speaker, I yield 1 minute to the distinguished gentleman from Guam, my very good friend, Mr. Moylan.
The gentleman is recognized.
Thank you to my friend from Oklahoma. Mr. Speaker, Guam is home to 3,372 federal employees, more than 43,000 SNAP recipients, and over 9,000 WIC recipients, and more than 20,000 veterans, all of whom have been impacted by this shutdown. If we continue to put politics over our country, my constituents will continue to suffer. Simply put, this gets us back on track, ensures funding for those who need it is in place, and turns the lights back on. This bill ensures that families receive the assistance they need, veterans have access to care, and our island is reimbursed for the sacrifice we made to keep federal programs running during this difficult time. I urge my colleagues to support this bill and to deliver for American people. The time for deliberation is when the government is open and people have the assistance they need. I reserve.
The gentleman yields. The gentleman from Oklahoma reserves. The gentlewoman from Connecticut is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 1 minute to the gentleman from Massachusetts, the distinguished ranking member of the Ways and Means Committee, Mr. Neal.
The gentleman is recognized.
Thank the gentlelady. Mr. Speaker, the destruction that is taking place in America's healthcare system during these 10 months is unbelievable. They've eviscerated the National Institutes of Health. They've cut back on the Centers for Disease Control, billions of dollars from Medicaid for a tax cut for the wealthy. Where do you see what's coming to America's hospitals after the next election? It's so contrived they waited until after the election to implement it. 24 million people are likely to lose health insurance if we don't implement these tax credits as suggested. The emergency room is going to be back in full force now because this is where people will go for their health care. All of this is taking place to justify a tax cut for people at the very top. And here's the real kicker. Our Republican colleagues of fiscal probity borrowed the money for the tax cuts. In 2017, it's $2.4 trillion. In the last tax bill, almost $4 trillion is borrowed for a tax cut for wealthy people. Whatever happened to the fiscal soundness that the Republican Party used to lecture everybody on? And I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields. The gentlewoman from Connecticut reserves. The gentleman from Oklahoma is recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I yield 1 minute to my very good friend, the distinguished gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Muser.
The gentleman is recognized.
I thank Chairman Cole for his leadership. Mr. Speaker, if this were a library, we would have the fiction side over there and the nonfiction side over here. The only thing that's not fiction, however, is their consistent criticism of the healthcare system known as Obamacare that they created. That's what this fight seems to be about. And that's the one end of things that is truthful. Today, Mr. Speaker, after 6 weeks of lots of pain and no gain, they're going to vote again to keep the government closed. They're going to vote again. They're whipping their votes so they would not be paying federal workers. They won't be funding essential programs like SNAP and undo the chaos at our airports. Okay, I spent the last 43 days in my district talking with these groups, talking with SNAP, talking with Head Start, seeing their pain, realizing it, understanding it. Some of my colleagues did the same, but shockingly, they're still going to vote to keep the government closed and keep this funding from being delivered. It's time to fix the damage the Democrats have caused. With this vote tonight, Republicans will restore SNAP payments. We'll get TSA and air traffic control.
Yield the gentleman an additional 15
workers.
seconds.
And you know what, Thank you, Chairman. And you know what, Mr. Speaker? Yesterday was Veterans Day. Veterans didn't fight for the red. They didn't fight for the blue. They fought for the red, white, and blue. Maybe tonight we can follow their example. I yield back.
The gentleman yields. The gentleman from Oklahoma reserves. The gentlewoman from Connecticut is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 1 minute to the gentlewoman from Washington, Ms. Del Bene.
The gentlewoman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill fails to address the fundamental needs of families across our country. Americans have made it crystal clear that affordability is their #1 concern. President Trump and Republicans promised to lower costs on day one, and that's been one big broken promise. Healthcare premiums are skyrocketing because Republicans refuse to extend the ACA tax credits, causing healthcare costs to go up for everyone. Over 4 million people will be forced off their coverage next year because it's too expensive. This is on top of soaring prices for food, energy, and housing. It's unacceptable for the wealthiest nation in the world. Republicans who say they support affordable health care should be standing up for their constituents rather than following in line behind President Trump. I'm going to keep fighting for affordable health care and lower costs. The American people deserve better. I yield back.
The gentlewoman yields. The gentlewoman from Connecticut reserves. The gentleman from Oklahoma is recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I yield 90 seconds to my very good friend, the distinguished gentleman from Texas, Mr. Gooden.
The gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Throughout this sham and shame of a shutdown, we've heard so many lies from the Democrats. And over the last 45 days, and especially the last 45 minutes, I've heard them say this is an evil bill. Republicans don't care about the disabled. Trump is the worst president in history for children. They've said that Republicans are to blame for the fentanyl crisis. Republicans shouldn't take photos with veterans. January 6th, of course they mentioned that. Republicans are corrupt, and they've said that Republicans are starving kids. What they haven't said is the one thing that this bill does, which is open up the government. Not one Democrat is getting up here saying this bill opens the government. So let me remind them and my colleagues and the American people, this bill opens the government tonight. And the American people have Republicans to thank for ending this shutdown and opening the government. I urge a yes vote. I am proud to vote yes. And I am so disappointed in my Democratic colleagues because for the life of me, throughout my time in the House, I've heard them talk about how wonderful it is to keep the government open and that a shutdown is so bad and can never happen. And tonight they won't even admit that this bill opens the government, and this is what we need for this country tonight. So I urge a yes vote, and I yield back.
The gentleman yields. The gentleman from Oklahoma reserves. The gentlewoman from Connecticut is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 1 minute to the gentlewoman from California, Ms. Barragan.
The gentlewoman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I oppose the Republican spending bill that makes health care more expensive for hardworking Americans. While Republicans were on their 7-week-plus vacation, all our constituents were receiving notices of premium increases. A constituent of mine, a lifelong educator, has been told that her premiums will jump from $383 to nearly $1,000. Meanwhile, Trump and Republicans can find money for a fancy ballroom. They can give tax breaks to billionaires. And they even included millions of dollars in cash payouts in this bill for 8 Republican senators. If anyone else in government gave themselves millions in taxpayer money, they would go to prison. But for Americans trying to afford health care, not $1 in tax credits. House Democrats are united against this corrupt bill and will keep fighting to protect America's health care. I urge my colleagues to reject this bill. I yield back.
The gentlewoman yields. The gentlewoman from Connecticut reserves. The gentleman from Oklahoma is recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I yield myself such time as I may consume. Mr. Speaker, it's been an interesting debate. Frankly, as a couple of my colleagues have suggested, a lot of the rhetoric on the other side hasn't had much to do with the legislation in front of us. My friends chose all on their own to shut the government down 43 days ago. During that time, soldiers have had to worry about getting paid. The only reason they were paid is the President of the United States managed to pull a rabbit out of the hat twice, or we've had military families completely unpaid. We have our air traffic controllers. Most of us flew here today or yesterday or in recent days. They're keeping the skies as safe as they can, but they haven't gotten paid. We're in this Capitol building. We're under the protection of the Capitol Police. They do a splendid job. They keep doing their job. They haven't been paid. We have people that are in desperate need of some of the services that this government has promised to give them. SNAP and WIC, that's at risk unless we pass this legislation tonight. So we can have all these debates about all these other issues. As a matter of fact, my friend the Speaker, his counterpart in the United States Senate, the Majority Leader, and the President have said, when you open the government, we'll be happy to talk to you about some of these issues. But you're not going to shut down the government, punish the American people, put people's lives at risk, and think we're going to sit down and negotiate with you under those circumstances. That is not going to happen. We told you 43 days ago, from bitter experience, government shutdowns don't work. They never achieve the objective that you announced. And guess what? You haven't achieved that objective yet, and you're not going to. We did the same thing twice, so I'm not saying that we've got clean hands over here. You guys did it on DACA, didn't work here, not going to work here. Only people that have suffered have been the American people, the people that we're all here to serve. So let's keep the focus on getting the government back open. I would also add, and I appreciate this very much, there have been robust discussions back and forth, and we have 3 appropriations bills attached to this. They're appropriations bills that do important things. The Ag bill will make sure that people that rely on WIC and SNAP don't have to worry about another government shutdown between now and September 30th of next year. The Ledge Branch bill will make sure that the Capitol Police and everybody else at staff that allow this chamber to function don't have to worry about not getting paid until September 30th of next year. And obviously, military construction and, more importantly, veterans rely on benefits commitments we have made. Passage of this bill makes sure that those commitments will be fulfilled between now and September 30th next year. And we buy the time to sit down and rationally and responsibly negotiate other appropriations bills that we can bring, I hope, in a bipartisan basis to this floor to keep the government open. So I would just ask my friends to reflect on that. I hope some of you feel the weight of that decision. I know you do. And I hope you can vote to keep the government open. There's no excuse to shut it down. The United States Senate operated to keep it open in a bipartisan fashion. Now, it took them a long time to do it, but they got there. Let's not follow that example. Let's follow when they finally got the job done, they sent us a product. It's not a perfect product. It's got some things in it I don't like. But frankly, if we kept the government open, we would have never been in this situation in the first place. So I would just ask my friends to remember their constituents. I know they think about them. I know they're serious about the points they make. Reopen the government. Raise your issues. Let's see if we can come to a negotiated settlement. But let's not punish the American people. A no vote on this, again, means soldiers and military families don't get paid. A no vote means that people in need of SNAP and WIC might not get it. A no vote means the people that allow us to come here and debate and work won't get paid either. I can go down the list of horrors. It's pretty simple. This is a vote about 2 things. Opening the government of the United States, which you willfully tried to shut down, fortunately did not succeed in that in this chamber, but some of your colleagues, using arcane Senate rules, did manage to do it, but finally came to their senses. You ought to pay attention to those people. They said, enough is enough. Let's reopen the government. I would urge my colleagues to do that today, and I hope it's done in a bipartisan way. With that, I reserve the balance of my time, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman reserves, and members are reminded to direct their remarks only to the chair. The gentlewoman from Connecticut is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 3 minutes to the gentlewoman from Massachusetts, the distinguished Democratic whip, Ms. Clark.
The gentlewoman is recognized.
Thank you. Donald Trump said the cost of living crisis is fake news, a con job by the Democrats. Mr. Speaker, 60% of Americans can't afford a basic quality of life. 45% have had to skip a doctor's appointment or a prescription because they can't afford it. 41% are living with medical debt. The American people are simply not making it. Not only is that crisis real, it is a crisis that Republicans promised to solve. Voters believe them. And now, after a 54-day hiatus, what are Republicans doing? They're voting to raise the cost of living. They're voting to make it even harder to get by. Not by some marginal amount. They are doubling, tripling, and quadrupling monthly premiums. And what's the defense? They are looking people in the eye and flat out gaslighting them. Costs aren't up, costs are down. Trump says, I don't want to hear about the affordability. Well, get used to hearing about it. You're going to hear about it a lot because people are feeling it every single day. People can't make rent. They can't afford their prescriptions. They can't afford to take their kid to a doctor. They can't find childcare, and when they find it, they can't afford that either. Grocery and utility bills are spiking. This is the crisis of our time, and it's about to get exponentially worse because the GOP's craven allegiance to billionaires over working people. The cost of living crisis is not fake news. It's not a perception issue. It is daily life for the people that we all represent. So let's do something about it. Let's reject this budget. Let's stop the healthcare cuts. Let's stop the premium hikes. Let's stop the hospital closures. And let's stop the billionaire giveaways. I yield back.
The gentlewoman yields. The gentlewoman from Connecticut reserves. The gentleman from Oklahoma is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I reserve.
The gentleman reserves. The gentlewoman from Connecticut is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, this bill fails to prevent health care costs from skyrocketing. It fails to address the crisis of affordability. It fails to keep our promise to veterans. It provides a $1 million jackpot to 8 senators. It fails to protect Congress's power of the purse. I encourage my colleagues to vote no, and I have the honor of yielding 1 minute to the gentleman from New York, our distinguished Democratic leader, Mr. Hakeem Jeffries.
The gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the distinguished gentlelady, the top Democrat on the House Appropriations Committee, for yielding and for her steadfast leadership on behalf of working families, hard-working American taxpayers in the great state of Connecticut and all across America. Mr. Speaker, I rise today in strong opposition to this woefully inadequate spending bill that fails to decisively address the Republican health care crisis and fails to extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits for tens of millions of Americans. Mr. Speaker, before I say anything further, let me say to our men and women in uniform, to our active duty troops, to our hardworking federal employees, to our civil servants, to our TSA agents, to our Capitol Police, to our staff here in the House of Representatives, to our air traffic controllers, thank you for your service. Thank you for your sacrifice. Thank you for the work that you do on behalf of the American people each and every day. And it's our promise to all of you that we will continue to work hard to make sure that you are treated with the dignity and respect that you deserve. In a year in which the Trump administration has gone after hardworking federal employees relentlessly, including firing more than 200,000 federal employees prior to the start of the Trump Republican shutdown. Republicans control the House, the Senate, and the presidency. Donald Trump and Republicans made the decision to shut the government down, the longest shutdown in American history. Would rather do that than provide health care that's affordable to working class Americans, middle class Americans, and hardworking American taxpayers. All across the country, I'm certain that there are people in America asking the question, where do we go from here? House Democrats have a simple answer. We will continue to fight to lower the high cost of living. House Democrats will continue to fight to address the health care crisis that Republicans have created. And House Democrats will continue to fight to extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits for tens of millions of Americans. This fight is not over. We're just getting started. We'll fight today. We'll fight tomorrow. We'll fight this week. We'll fight next week. We'll fight this month. We'll fight next month. We'll fight until we win this battle for the American people. That's our commitment as House Democrats. And there's only two ways that this fight will end. Only two ways, Mr. Speaker, that this fight will end. Either Republicans finally decide to extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits this year, or the American people will throw Republicans out of their jobs next year and end the speakership of Trump once and for all. That's how this fight ends. Mr. Speaker, during this painful Trump-Republican shutdown, what we've seen is two different philosophies in terms of how to govern for the American people. The Democratic Party philosophy is clear. We are ready, willing, and able to find bipartisan common ground anytime, any place, to enact spending agreements that actually make life better for the American people. But in order to do that, we need to have partners on the other side of the aisle who are actually willing to find a bipartisan path forward. But what we've seen from Republicans from the very beginning of this presidency is a my way or the highway approach. That's been the Republican philosophy. Jam your extremism down the throats of the American people. That's what we've seen from day one of this presidency. That's the reason why the government has been shut down by Republicans and Donald Trump for the longest period of time in American history. What have we seen from Donald Trump and Republicans during this shutdown? A consistent unwillingness to actually find common ground in order to make life better for the American people. Donald Trump, during this shutdown, found the time to play golf week after week after week. Donald Trump found the time to pardon serial fraudsters like George Santos and Rudolph Giuliani. Donald Trump found the time to meet with the Chinese Communist Party. Donald Trump found the time to destroy the East Wing of the White House. Donald Trump found the time to extort $230 million from the Department of Justice so he could line his pockets. Donald Trump found the time to bail out Argentina with $40 billion. Donald Trump found the time to rip away SNAP benefits from 42 million Americans. Mr. Speaker, these extremists are not like us. They're not like us. They have zero interest in fighting hard to make life better for the American people. Their philosophy, my way or the highway, our response, get lost. We're going to continue to fight hard on behalf of the American people. In the midst of a health care crisis and a cost of living crisis that is very real, despite what Donald Trump, the leader of the Republican Party, has to say, he claims there is no affordability crisis in the United States of America. But why would anyone believe anything that Donald Trump or Republicans have to say on this issue? Because throughout 2024, before the election, Republicans in the House and in the Senate, and Donald Trump on the campaign trail spent all of their time saying that costs were going to go down on day one. But costs haven't gone down. Republicans haven't done a damn thing to lower the high cost of living. Costs haven't gone down in this country. Costs have gone up. Inflation is on the way up. Housing costs out of control. Grocery costs out of control. Electricity bills out of control. Healthcare costs skyrocketing out of control. And in the midst of this affordability crisis, seeing this, Democrats said, we've got to fight to make sure that we extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits so that tens of millions of people, working class folks, middle class folks, people in rural America, working class America, small town America, the heartland of America, black and brown communities all throughout America, don't experience premium increases that in some cases will go up by $1,000 or $2,000 per year. In many cases, month after month after month, $1,000 or $2,000 per month, tens of thousands of dollars per year. Unacceptable in this country, the wealthiest country in the history of the world. And this is in the midst of a Republican health care crisis. Republicans enacted the largest cut to Medicaid in American history, ripped health insurance away from 14 million Americans. As a result of Republican policies, hospitals, nursing homes, and community-based health centers are closing all across America, including in rural parts of this great country of ours. And now, because of Republican refusal to extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits, tens of millions of Americans are at risk of being unable to afford to go see a doctor when they need one. In this country, the wealthiest country in the history of the world, it can't be the case that health care is simply a privilege for the wealthy, the well-off, and the well-connected. Mr. Speaker, that's the Republican perspective. We believe as Democrats that health care has to be a right, and a right that's affordable and available to every single American in the United States. That's what this fight is all about. And that's what the fight will continue to be about as we move forward. Many of my Republican colleagues have suggested that they want to deal with the health care affordability issue, that they want to address the Republican health care crisis that's devastating people all across this country. Well, we have an opportunity for you to do so. There's a discharge petition connected to legislation that House Democrats have introduced to extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits for 3 years, because we believe that working class Americans, middle class Americans, and everyday Americans deserve the same level of certainty that Republicans always provide to the wealthy, the well-off, and their well-connected donors. Working class Americans deserve that level of certainty. So join us in extending the Affordable Care Act tax credits. It's not too late. We're in the midst of open enrollment, but the tax credits expire on December 31st. And we will stay on this issue until we get this issue resolved for everyday Americans. Mr. Speaker, as I close, I've had the opportunity, as many of us do, to serve in the United States Congress with legendary figures, too numerous to mention. Legendary members, of course, Speaker Emerita Nancy Pelosi, Steny Hoyer, the great Jim Clyburn, Maxine Waters, Elijah Cummings, Charlie Rangel, our own Marcy Kaptur, the longest-serving woman in the history of the United States House of Representatives. We've all had the opportunity to serve with legendary members, John Dingell, too numerous to mention. But one can't call that role without calling the name of the great John Lewis. I had the distinct honor of serving with John Lewis for several terms. Many of us here in the House of Representatives did. I'll never forget, on my first day in the Congress, I had the opportunity to meet John Lewis for the first time in person. And he called me over to see him on the House floor, and he just asked me a simple question. He said, "Are you the new guy?" And I said, "Yes, sir, Mr. Lewis, I am." And he said, "Well, we're colleagues now. You don't have to call me Mr. Lewis, you can call me John." I said, "Yes, sir, Mr. Lewis, I understand." And then he said to me, "You're from Brooklyn, right?" Now, Mr. Speaker, I got to be honest, I was tempted to say, Brooklyn is always in the house. But instead, since my mother raised me with some sense, Lenita Jeffries, I said, "Yes, sir, I'm from Brooklyn." And then he said something to me that I've never forgotten. He said, "Well, I hear some positive things about you from your predecessor, but Washington, D.C., young man, can be a rough place. So I don't want you to get into any trouble unless it's good trouble." And I just wanted to stop by on the House floor to make sure it was clear to the American people that the spirit of John Lewis lives amongst House Democrats, and we will continue to get into good trouble to make their life better. That's our commitment to every single American all across this country, from this day and for every day moving forward. And it was John Lewis who said to us that ours is not the struggle of one day, 1 week, or 1 year. Ours is the struggle of a lifetime, and maybe even many lifetimes. And each one of us in every generation must do our part. Mr. Lewis, we love you. We were blessed by our opportunity to serve with you, and House Democrats are here to do our part. We're in this fight until we win this fight for the American people. I yield back.
The gentleman yields. Members are reminded to refrain from engaging in personalities towards the president. The gentlewoman from Connecticut has 30 seconds remaining and is recognized.
I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentlewoman from Connecticut yields. The gentleman from Oklahoma is recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. It's my distinct pleasure to yield the balance of our time to the distinguished Speaker of the House, my very good friend and a person I admire greatly.
1 minute.
I'm actually just going to hold you to 1 minute, Mr. Speaker. My good friend, the gentleman from Louisiana, Speaker Mike Johnson.
The gentleman from Louisiana is recognized.
Thank you. I want to thank my friend Chairman Cole's done an extraordinary job in this process. And Mr. Speaker, we all know why we're here. House Democrats voted to shut the government down. It was 54 days ago when we had that vote, September 19th. And since that time, Senate Democrats have voted 14 times to close the government. Republicans voted a collective 15 times to open the government for the people, and the Democrats voted that many times to close it. And then they admitted, many of them, and we could name them here, but I'm not going to take the time, they admitted that they were using the American people as leverage in this political game. They knew that it would cause pain, and they did it anyway. The whole exercise was pointless. It was wrong, and it was cruel. In mere moments, I want you to watch the board. They're going to do it again. I'm going to guess for you that most of our Democrat colleagues are going to vote again to close the government, again to take food out of the mouths of families that need it, again to deny pay to federal employees, again to stall flights and cancel airlines and do all the rest that they've done. But we are not going to let them succeed in that gambit, and that's right. While the Democrats keep voting to shut the government down, Republicans are going to vote to open it back up. And with that, we're going to get the American government running again and working for the people as they deserve. I'm going to close with this. You know, as Speaker, you have the ability to talk as long as you want, but I'm not going to do that tonight. We're not going to waste any more time of the people. I'm just going to say this. I think that everybody needs to remember this one simple thing. From the very beginning of this whole ordeal, on the Republican side, we operated in good faith. We offered a clean, nonpartisan CR. We were honest and transparent with the American people from the very beginning, and every single day of the shutdown, we went out and looked right into the camera with a press conference and told the American people the simple truth. We have done for the people what has been right and just and truthful. And in the end, that is what God honors always. Don't forget it. We need to get this government open as soon as possible, and I'm going to yield back the remainder of my time so we can do that. The American people demand it and deserve it. My friends, let's get this done. Thank you. I yield back.
Proud of you.
The gentleman yields. The gentleman from Oklahoma has 3 minutes remaining and is recognized.
I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields. All time for debate has expired. Pursuant to House Resolution 873, the previous question is ordered. The question is on the motion by the gentleman from Oklahoma, Mr. Cole. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. No. In the opinion of the chairs, the ayes have it. For what purpose does the gentleman from Connecticut stand?
Mr. Speaker, I request the yeas and nays.
The yeas and nays are requested. Those favoring a vote by the yeas and nays will rise. A sufficient number having risen, the yeas and nays are ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This is a 15-minute vote. On this vote, the yeas are 222, the nays are 209. The bill is passed. The motion is adopted. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. Going to get the House in order. The chair lays before the House a communication.
The Honorable the Speaker, House of Representatives, sir. I respectfully request to be relieved from assignments to the House Armed Services Committee and the House Select Committee on Competition between the United States and the Chinese Communist Party, effective immediately. It has been an honor and privilege to serve on these committees on behalf of my constituents and the American people. Signed sincerely, Mikey Sherrill, Member of Congress.
Without objection, the resignation is accepted. The House will be in order. Yeah. Shh. The House will be in order. For what purpose does the gentleman from Kentucky seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I offer a privileged resolution and ask for its immediate consideration.
The clerk will report the resolution.
House Resolution 874. Resolved that the House has heard with profound sorrow of the death of the Honorable Richard B. Cheney, a former Vice President of the United States of America. Resolved that the clerk communicate these resolutions to the Senate and transmit a copy thereof to the family of the deceased. Resolved that when the House adjourns today, it adjourn as a further mark of respect to the memory of the deceased.
Without objection, the resolution is agreed to and the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. Pursuant to Clause 13 of Rule 1 and House Resolution 874, the House stands adjourned until 9 a.m. tomorrow.
Will the gentleman find a microphone and repeat his request?
Speaker, I would like to ask unanimous consent to address the body, the will.
I recognize for that purpose.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to thank
Recognized.
the Honorable, hello?
The House will be in order. The well will be cleared. All members will clear the well. For what purpose does the gentleman from Oklahoma seek recognition?
Up the bill H.R. 5371, the continuing appropriations, agriculture, legislative branch, military construction, and Veterans Affairs and Extension Act 2026 with the Senate amendment thereto, and I have a motion at the desk.
The clerk will report the title of the bill, designate the Senate amendment, and designate the motion.
H.R. 5371, an act making continuing appropriations and extensions for fiscal year 2026 and for other purposes. Senate amendment. Mr. Cole of Oklahoma moves that the House concur in the Senate amendment to H.R. 5371.
Pursuant to House Resolution 873, the motion shall be debatable for 1 hour, equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on Appropriations or their respective designees. The gentleman from Oklahoma, Mr. Cole, and the gentlelady from Connecticut, Ms. DeLauro, each will control 30 minutes. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Oklahoma. The House will be in order. The gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks and include extraneous material on the measure under consideration.
Without objection, so ordered. The House will be in order. All members are instructed to take their conversations outside. The gentleman from Oklahoma is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentleman is recognized.
Thank you. I rise today in support of the continuing appropriations, agriculture, legislative branch, military construction and Veterans Affairs, and Extension Act of 2026. History reminds us, Mr. Speaker, that shutdowns never change the outcome. The only cost is paid by the American people. Over the last 43 days, the facts did not shift, the votes required did not shift, the path forward did not change. The only thing that did move was the level of pain Democrats inflicted on the nation. For 6 long weeks, Americans have paid the price for a shutdown they neither caused nor deserved. The pain has been all too real for far too many Americans, including families struggling without paychecks, seniors on the brink of hunger and food assistance lapse, airports in chaos, the communities bracing as programs that they rely on were stalled or stopped altogether. And with yesterday being Veterans Day, we especially reflect on the impact of this shutdown on those who served our nation, past and present. Our military families were left wondering if they would be paid. Thanks to President Trump, they were. Yet this is not how the greatest nation in the world should function. Today, that changes. The legislation before us reopens the government, restores critical services, and puts an end to the needless hardship Democrats have inflicted on the country. This bill supports our troops, it pays federal workers, it fully funds SNAP benefits until September 30th of next year, it compensates our air traffic controllers right before a busy holiday season. In fact, it takes a holistic approach in ensuring federal services and programs are operational. In the simplest terms, we're putting the government back to work for our people. The bill is fundamentally the same responsible approach House Republicans offered on September 19th, but with an important addition: 3 full-year appropriations bills for FY26. These bipartisan, bicameral full-year appropriations bills cover the military, construction, and Veterans Affairs, legislative branch, and agriculture, rural development, and food and drug administration divisions. Once passed, we will have full-year funding in place for many of our most crucial programs. Military construction needs will be met for a full year. as will medical programs for our nation's veterans. The legislative branch will be properly resourced, including critical funding enhancements for the Capitol Police and for member security. And agriculture, food, and nutrition programs like WIC and SNAP will be fully funded to help vulnerable people in need. Importantly, this legislation delivers member-driven community project funding in both the military construction and agricultural division, which will direct resources back into the hands of the communities we represent. This was a top priority for the Appropriations Committee, and we achieved it while holding overall spending levels in check. It's responsible appropriations progress like this that causes me to reflect on an important message to our friends in the Democratic leadership. My sincere apologies to Minority Leaders Jeffries and Schumer, but after today, you will no longer get to hold the government hostage, and you will not get to force a rushed, pork-filled Christmas omnibus at the end of the year. Republicans have actively restored a responsible line-by-line process. Over the next few months, we will continue this work and efforts through regular order. This Article I advancement is an accomplishment that every member of this chamber can be proud of, regardless of party. Yet some still need to decide what they stand for today. So to my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, do you want the leverage or do you want to legislate? Do you treat Americans as collateral damage or as constituents? And do you answer to your caucus or your country? For Republicans, the answer has been clear for the last 43 days. We have and we will continue to put Americans first. Democrats can join us. They have an opportunity to make the responsible choice to reopen our government and pass 3 official full-year appropriations bills. 8 Senate Democrats saw reason and did exactly that. I hope House Democrats do the same. True courage is taking responsible action for the nation, even when politics makes it inconvenient. Let's reopen the government and get back to work. With that, Mr. Speaker, I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Oklahoma reserves. The gentlelady from Connecticut is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The House is not in order. Thank you.
House will be in order.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I yield myself 7 minutes.
The gentlelady is recognized.
I rise in opposition to this bill that does nothing, not one thing, to address the Republican health care crisis amid a cost of living crisis. More than 20 million Americans will have to pay double, even triple their monthly insurance premiums in just a matter of weeks. And this bill leaves families without even a glimmer of hope that their costs might go down. Energy prices are up, grocery prices are up, housing costs are up. When 2/3 of American workers are living paycheck to paycheck, you can understand why the most important issue on their minds is affordability. What does President Trump say? And I quote, "Affordability is a con job," end quote. How out of touch can you be? Mr. President, start to listen to the American people, not your millionaire, billionaire friends. President Trump and my Republican colleagues refuse to address this issue. They continue to avoid it. They were so intent on avoiding it that they shut down the government instead of dealing with it. Speaker Johnson has indicated that he will not deal with it. He has shown no interest in holding a vote on extending the health care subsidies, which would prevent monthly costs from soaring. Republicans have tried to say they will deal with this problem their own way, but they have no plan. They are trying to repeal the Affordable Care Act, as they have been trying to do unsuccessfully for 15 years. However, they are poised to succeed, which is why it is so important for this continuing resolution to fail. President Trump and Republicans, their plan is to drive up prices for everybody, compounding the cost of living crisis. More than 2 million Americans are expected to lose their health insurance next year because it has simply become too expensive. There are more than 50 pages of health care provisions in this bill. Not one of them stops costs from skyrocketing at the beginning of next year. Not one of them offers relief to American families being squeezed tighter and tighter by the Republican crisis. There is one group of people, however, who will receive some relief thanks to this bill. United States senators who may have participated in an insurrection, snuck into this bill at the 11th hour by Senate Republicans, is a provision to pay out at least $1 million each to 8 United States senators implicated in the January 6th insurrection. Understand, this is a corrupt precedent. This is where members can profit from their own votes. It's the fleecing of the American people, which they get and understand. At the same time, this bill excludes a provision that will order a plaque to be hung that honors the police officers who put their lives on the line to defend our democracy from that same insurrection. What a contrast. It is yet another instance of this administration's shameless corruption that is financially ruining American families. While there is $230 million for the president to pay himself from the Department of Justice, $8 million for some of his closest Senate allies, $200 million for a pair of private jets for the Department of Homeland Security Secretary, $40 billion to Argentina, the American people are left with nothing but higher costs. This bill also fails to fully cover the Toxic Exposure Fund, which was created to support veterans exposed to burn pits and Agent Orange. We made a promise to stand by the men and women who served our country in uniform. This bill does not live up to that promise. You know, Republicans need to stop taking photographs with veterans and then vote against their health care. Those who lead in the appropriations process here believe in the constitutional power of the purse. And over the past month, President Trump has been firing federal workers en masse. And when his administration has failed there, they have made life so miserable for federal workers that they had no choice but to leave. Federal workers should be, and I quote, traumatically affected. Those are the words of the Office of Management and Budget Director Russ Vought, an unelected bureaucrat. The federal workforce has dwindled by 200,000 since January, jeopardizing the public services that so many people rely on. Spare us your false concern. And since January, this administration has been stealing from our communities, withholding as much as $410 billion in funding approved by Democrats and Republicans, House, Senate, signed into law, and they are illegally blocking authorized funds from being distributed. Even now, as we debate this bill, the Trump administration is arguing to the Supreme Court that they should be allowed to withhold food stamp funding that Congress lawfully approved. They were ordered by 3 separate courts to distribute food assistance and are still fighting to withhold it. It is not connected to opening this government. They have the money. They have it now for food stamps. They just refuse to use it. Imagine using food as a political weapon, unspeakable and immoral. It seems like their only plan is to strip children of food assistance while kicking their parents off their health insurance. They have demonstrated that that is who they are. These are their true colors. You cannot expect Democrats to go along with any bipartisan funding deal if that agreement can be undone with a party line vote. Congress must assert its authority over the power of the purse. I encourage my colleagues to vote no, and I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentlelady reserves. The gentleman from Oklahoma is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I yield 1 minute to our distinguished majority leader, the gentleman from Louisiana, Mr. Scalise.
The gentleman from Louisiana is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank my friend, the Chairman of the Appropriations, Mr. Cole from Oklahoma, for not only yielding, but for bringing this important bill to the floor. Our appropriators worked tirelessly to negotiate a multi-bill package that is part of this bill to reopen the government. And we never should have been here, Mr. Speaker. We tried as Republicans over a month ago to prevent a government shutdown. We had a vote here on the House floor. 99% of Republicans voted to keep the government open, and 99% of Democrats voted to shut it down. And then that bill went over to the Senate, and we watched for 42 days, where time and time again, Democrats, just to appease their most radical base, continued to vote in unison to shut the government down. And during that shutdown, we saw millions of families experience pain, Mr. Speaker, pain and suffering that Democrats themselves acknowledged that they imposed on the American people. But they said over and over again, we have quote after quote from Democrats during the shutdown, that they needed to impose the suffering to get leverage, Mr. Speaker, to use the American people as pawns to get leverage. For what? For what? They ultimately filed an alternative bill, $1.5 trillion mad spending spree that included things like $200 billion of taxpayer funding for illegals to get taxpayer benefits, while they gutted the $50 billion rural health care fund that we put in place in the Working Families Tax Cut. So, Mr. Speaker, anybody who comes up here and says they care about health care, they were also advocating to gut the $50 billion rural health care fund to provide $200 billion in taxpayer-funded health care benefits for illegals. It's insanity. And if you really want to look at where this all began, as some on the other side, Democrats, want to talk about a health care crisis, the health care law of the land is what many refer to as Obamacare. But let's remember the original name that Democrats gave that bill when they created it. They called it the Affordable Care Act. The Affordable Care Act. Only Democrats voted for it. Republicans knew it was going to be anything but affordable. It was going to interfere with the doctor-patient relationship, and unfortunately it's done that. But if you want to talk about affordable, and maybe the only other bill that's more laughable in its name is the Inflation Reduction Act. Yeah, that's another product brought to you by Democrat-only votes. The Inflation Reduction Act, which ushered in the inflation under Joe Biden that we're still trying to shake today. But the Affordable Care Act, Mr. Speaker, since it started, Americans have seen over 80% increases in their health care costs because of a Democrat-created bill that they want to now blame on Republicans. I understand why they would want to try to now pawn that off on somebody else. But then if you look over time, during COVID, they created a temporary relief fund, not to individuals, Mr. Speaker, but to insurance companies. Democrats created a temporary, they called it temporary in the law, temporary COVID relief tax credit to insurance companies, to bail out big insurance companies who are seeing record profits, and that's now what they want Republicans to renew. A insurance company bailout that Democrats created to be temporary. They set it up to expire. And now they're saying that the world's going to end if that insurance company bailout doesn't get renewed. While at the same time, when we as Republicans worked to actually lower premiums for families, they fought it every step of the way. That's right. We had a bill that we passed through this House just a few months ago in the Working Families Tax Credit. Part of that bill was called the cost share reduction, was scored by the CBO to lower premiums for families by over 12%. And what happened? It gets over, and by the way, every Democrat voted against that too, because they've never cared about lowering premiums. Then that bill gets over to the Senate. Senate Democrats worked overtime to get that provision removed. And if you go look at Senate Democrat Budget Committee website, they still brag that they removed that provision that would have lowered premiums for families. So, absolutely, Republicans have worked and will continue, by the way, to work to lower premiums for families. But make no mistake, the high premiums that everybody faces today are a result of the inaptly named Affordable Care Act and the many failures associated with it. But this bill today is about ending the misery Democrats created on families. That is just about funding the government, not about solving other problems that we should be working to solve, but about getting the government back open while not holding the American people hostage. And that, Mr. Speaker, is what has disgusted the American people most during this shutdown. That should have never happened, but it's that it has caused real suffering for American families. Our men and women in uniform that had to wonder whether or not they're going to get paid. Air traffic controllers who already had a highly stressful job and then had to show up for work without getting paid. Multiple paychecks missed. Now you're seeing, because a lot of those air traffic controllers have to go work jobs as Uber drivers. They aren't even being able to show up for work because they still have bills due, their rent's due. They're trying to put food on their table, and Democrats want to vote no tonight to keep denying them food. The 42 million SNAP recipients, those people that are low income that need those food benefits, if you vote no today, you are voting to deny those 42 million low-income families basic food needs. Don't talk about how much you care about low-income people and vote no tonight to deny them food, basic services, basic things that American families need who shouldn't be part of the leverage Democrats want to show their radical base that they're fighting Donald Trump because they're upset with the results of the election from November. It is time to end this madness, Mr. Speaker. Let's get this government back open. Let's go negotiate our differences, which are many, but let's do it while not continuing to hold the American people hostage. I urge my Democrat colleagues who have voted relentlessly to shut this government down and to impose this suffering on the American people to stop. Stop imposing the suffering. Let's open the government. Let's get back to the work of the American people. I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Louisiana yields back. Does the gentleman from Oklahoma reserve?
I do, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman reserves. The gentlelady from Connecticut is recognized.
I remind the majority leader that a 60-year-old couple earning $82,800 per year, annual premiums will rise by over $17,000, a 255% increase. It now gives me great pleasure to yield 3 minutes to the gentleman from Georgia, the distinguished ranking member of the Agricultural and Rural Development Subcommittee, Mr. Bishop.
The gentleman from Georgia is recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Ranking Member DeLauro. As ranking member of the Agriculture, Rural Development, and FDA Subcommittee, I rise to oppose this bill. Though it does represent, for the most part, solid bipartisan work to provide investments in agriculture in rural America, I am disappointed that the rest of it falls far short of the needs of most Americans. Healthcare providers and patients are frustrated and frightened by the imminent skyrocketing of healthcare costs caused by the loss of the ACA tax credits and cuts to Medicaid, Medicare, and life-saving biomedical research. My constituent, Angela Holmes, is unable to walk without debilitating pain. She's worried that without tax credits, she won't be able to afford health insurance to complete the multiple back surgeries she needs. For many Georgians, health care is a matter of life and death. Our Republican colleagues could have corrected this in the Rules Committee, but they rejected an amendment last night that would have lowered health premium costs. To me, that's unconscionable. So are the administration's actions during the shutdown. As a Christian, I'm outraged that USDA used the shutdown to illegally withhold SNAP from 42 million Americans. USDA had the chance to do the right thing and use designated contingency funds, but rejected it. And when ordered to do so by the courts, they fought all the way to the Supreme Court to keep hungry families from receiving food. America produces the highest quality, safest, most affordable, and abundant food, fiber, and medicine anywhere in the world. To that end, this bill provides many welcome investments. It fully funds SNAP and WIC, replenishes the SNAP and WIC contingency funds, and fully funds cash value vouchers for fruits and vegetables for women and children. It also helps rural America by providing $1 billion in single-family direct home loans, $120 million over the House level, and funding water and wastewater programs at $446 million, both issues that Democrats tried to address in full committee. The bill provides $1.8 billion for the Agricultural Research Service, $1.6 billion for NIFA, protecting farmers, small businesses, and families against President Trump's budget request to eliminate land-grant university research and extension activities across the country. I'm pleased to see that the bill language requires USDA to notify Congress before canceling grants over $1 million. The agricultural portion of this bill does make positive steps in the right direction. The bill discards many of the harmful policy riders, which in the House bill, yet it does not go far enough to negate House language falsely questioning the safety of mifepristone and encouraging FDA to explore liability protections for certain infant formula manufacturers, over which the agency has absolutely no jurisdiction. And while the overall funding package may reopen the government for a month or two, this bill does not address the breach of trust this administration has demonstrated since January. They fail to follow the law, and we cannot trust that they will even execute this bill if we vote on it today.
The gentleman's time has expired.
They have 15 seconds.
The gentleman is recognized for an additional 15 seconds.
They fail to follow the law, and we can't trust that they'll execute the law. They cut SNAP by 20% in the big ugly bill this summer, dismantled funded federal programs, fired federal workers, and illegally ignored court orders. This bill fails to address the health care crisis, and bipartisan outrage has erupted over language in the bill to pay millions of dollars of taxpayer dollars to a handful of senators whose phone records were subpoenaed in relation to the January 6th investigation. It's a bad bill.
The gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman yields back. Does the gentlelady from Connecticut reserve? The gentlelady reserves. The gentleman from Oklahoma is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I recognize yield 2 minutes to my very good friend, distinguished gentleman from Texas and distinguished chairman of the Military Construction and Veterans Subcommittee, the Appropriations Committee, Mr. Carter.
The gentleman from Texas is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I want to thank my longtime friend, colleague, and the chairman of the Appropriations Committee, Mr. Cole, for yielding me the time. I rise in support of H.R. 5371 and look forward to reopening the government. The shutdown has gone on long enough, and it's time to end it. Yesterday was Veterans Day, and it's a timely reminder of the commitment our armed forces personnel have made and the responsibility that we have to take care of those who serve our nation. Military Construction and Veteran Affairs component of the legislation meets that goal. The legislation includes $133.3 billion for the Department of Veterans Affairs, including $113.8 billion for that's discretionary funding for the VA medical care. It includes critical funding for Medicare, medical health services, telehealth services, veterans homelessness programs, medical research programs, and rural health initiatives. It invests in information technology, including robust investments in VA electronic health record modernization. Fully funds all mandatory veterans benefits, including veterans disability compensation programs, education benefits, and vocational rehabilitation and employment training. Nearly $20 billion for the Department of Defense military construction programs. This amount funds nearly 300 projects at military bases around the world.
Yield the gentleman an additional 15 seconds, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman has an additional 15 seconds.
It includes $3 billion to improve and maintain housing for service members, provides requested resources for the American battle monuments, Armed Forces Retirement Home and operations of Arlington Cemetery. I want to thank Mr. Cole for his endless work to get us to this point.
The gentleman's
and I
time
urge
has
my
expired.
colleagues to join me in supporting the bill. And I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. Does the gentleman from Oklahoma reserve? The gentleman reserves. The gentlelady from Connecticut is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 3 minutes to the gentlewoman from Florida, the distinguished ranking member of the Military Construction and Veterans Affairs Subcommittee, Ms. Wasserman Schultz.
The gentlelady from Florida is recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the gentlewoman for yielding. I rise to oppose this slush fund for senators bill that will force health care costs to explode for millions of Americans. In fact, this legislation guarantees only 2 things. Republican senators suspected of helping